Bundle up. It's getting colder.
I think we all have that anxiety in the back of our heads about the end of the world. After all, every single group of individuals who have ever lived have had those among them that would claim that the world is ending. It's part of our psychology. There's just something inherent in us that makes us fear the end of everything and makes us want to fight back against it as hard as possible. And FrostPunk is a game about doing just that. After global warming has completely rendered the Earth a barren wasteland, a group of travelers leave from London to travel to a new outpost somewhere else in England. At their destination, there's a massive coal generator that erects in the center of what will be their new town at the bottom of a massive crater. With hard work and dedication, they can build a hive of civilization inside of what seems to be some sort of ancient impact site. Or die trying. After all, FrostPunk isn't a forgiving game. 11-bit Studios intends for you to lose. They intend for you to try again. I had only played one of 11-bit Studios games before, their freshman title, This War of Mine. That wasn't really a game for me, as I felt like its oppressive atmosphere was too harsh and the grimdark nature became eventually comical. I barely remember playing it, but from what I remember, I stopped because I felt like no matter how well I did at the game's punishing mechanics would strip away any type of fun that I was having. You may or may not have the same experience, it's up to personal preference. It's just absolute happenstance that 11-bit Studios would tackle one of my favorite genres next. There's no way for me to know if you're familiar, but I love colony sims. According to Steam, over 50% of my playtime in 2022 was dedicated to the colony sim genre, and I can't say that I'm surprised. I think the fascination started at some point during my college years where a friend of mine introduced me to Dwarf Fortress. It was all downhill from there. So FrostPunk is a game that, on its face, is designed for me, and in some ways it is. But that doesn't mean that the game didn't have flaws that I especially hated. First off, the game has terrible performance. I have a good computer. This thing has been with me forever and can run every game I've ever thrown at it, but FrostPunk stutters to a crawl every time a cutscene is about to start, or sometimes just completely randomly. During cutscenes, entire models would be missing, and I can't think of any other reason for a game like this to have such terrible performance. I'm not talking about lowering the frame rate either. I'm talking about it goes from a purely 60 FPS clean frame rate to 1 frame a second. The game completely freezes up for seconds at a time. I lowered every graphics setting, turned off anti-aliasing, searched the web, but nothing I found fixed the issue. I played this game all the way through with this issue. Now that might actually sound like a glowing review considering I played it even with its flaws, and maybe it is. Or maybe it just says something about how the game doesn't require a high frame rate to play. Mostly the latter. If this was Doom 2016, I can tell you this review wouldn't be happening. There are no quick snap decisions in FrostPunk. If you're playing correctly, everything in your run is planned from the very beginning. You're playing ethically bankrupt city planner, and I love it. Your game loop consists of building around a generator in the center of a grid system, utilizing the stacks of people that you have for labor, dividing them equally, while all the while trying to pass laws that allow you to get away with more and more heinous crimes against humanity. Things like child labor for every job, and all rations are now Campbell's chicken noodle soup rations.
And I love it.
FrostPunk attempts to make you feel as bad as humanly possible. I'm starting to think this is a staple with 11-bit Studios. But just like every other colony sim and every game that I've played by 11-bit, it fails terribly to be the emotional roller coaster that it hopes to be. Just like every other game in the colony sim genre, FrostPunk fails at making the nameless little ants that you order around seem like reasonable, rational people. Your people's opinion of you as their leader is represented at the bottom of the screen by a hope and discontent bar. If hope falls all the way down, you'll be given 2 days in-game time to recover to 15% of the bar. If discontent raises all the way up, you'll be given 2 days to lower it by 15%. Some of the things that cause your people to lose hope and gain discontent make logical sense, but the game works very much in the space of people work off mob mentality. In this game, if you do everything correctly for the survival of your people, you can still be removed from your station. Worse yet, there are very few ways that you as the player can actively raise or lower these bars. Most of the time, the only way to gain hope or lower discontent is to react to random events that occur similar to a 4X game. There are a few ways you can affect the levels directly, but they're options that you won't have access to until a few hours into your run. It's not like Dwarf Fortress, where one of your dwarves might figure, I haven't had a drink in the last 15 minutes, so I'm going to go on a murderous rampage. But it's still there. Considering the circumstances of living in a colony of only 80 people in this snowy hellhole, there is no reasonable person alive who would feel that children should not be working full-time jobs gathering supplies. Yet your people will still gain discontent and lose hope if you institute the law for it. There is the flip side of this coin. The game will give you the freedom to make terrible decisions like make giant piles of dead bodies in the snow instead of a cemetery, but I can't for the life of me see why anyone would ever make that choice. The tree of laws that you can pass is actually full of all sorts of these weird choices. Law nodes that you can fill in are sometimes split into two different pieces of which you can only choose one. One of these is the ethical option, and the other one is the objectively better option. The ethical option is almost always a hindrance to your colony, and choosing them is like shooting yourself in the foot. Such great choices as don't amputate limbs and instead just hope it goes away, or a fun ethical choice the first time it shows up on your screen, but by the 5th run, the novelty is completely diminished. In theory, as the weather around you becomes more demanding, the decisions you have to make to stay alive will do just the same. This is FrostPunk's claim to fame. On a whim, the weather around you will change and the temperature will get colder. As things get colder, the stations you manage will incur worse and worse penalties. As the captain of this ship, it's your job to make sure that you balance out the technology that you research with the supplies you gather, supplying constant upgrades and resources to your station so that they can in turn heat your town. For my first few playthroughs, I found this overwhelming, but that was because I had assumed that the game would be balanced. This game starts you out with nothing, not even the ability to mine coal. Your only option is to gather it from non-replenishable nodes around the map. Originally, I would speedrun through the technology tree to coal mining, just to keep the generator on, not realizing that there was a better alternative right below it in the technology tree. Coal thumpers will produce an infinite amount of coal out of the ground below your feet. The only downside is that you have to have someone around to pick it up. By late game, I spent all of my resources upgrading, gathering spots, and coal thumpers to the point to where I never ran out of coal. I had over 5 of them running at a time, and it breaks the game's economy absolutely in half. Nothing else in the technology tree is this overpowered. Giving you the ability to produce endless nodes of coal for yourself shatters any sense of scarcity the game's atmosphere is otherwise trying to convey. And to make matters worse, they stack. Having a piece of technology produce coal from the ground is a great idea. After all, that's what coal mines do. But coal mines can only be placed on a limited resource of coal deposits. Coal thumpers effectively allow you to place your own coal mine wherever you want on the map and supply yourself endlessly with coal as long as you have the manpower to gather it. It's absolutely broken. I don't think the developers of FrostPunk will ever watch this video, but if they do, I would hope that they would make coal thumpers only able to pull a finite amount of coal from the earth. Making a factory of unlimited stackable resource nodes is just too much for the game to handle. Not to mention it destroys replayability. It took me 13 hours to beat Frostpunk's main campaign, A New Home, but I do still want to play more. This base building system is extremely intuitive and fun to use. Balancing the distance of homes from the center of my map to guarantee heat radiation is a fun time, but I can't help but feel like the flaws in the logic breaks my immersion. For you see, in Frostpunk there is no way to build upward. You can only build horizontally outward. Surely, if your life depended on heat from this massive pillar you've designed your city around, you would build vertically around it. But there is no way to build a second floor on any of the facilities or to build anything directly around the generator. Better yet, why has no one realized that they could build a tent around the entire town and trap all this heat underneath it? Or why not dig tunnels to live beneath the generator in emergency cold snaps? But even with this obviously glaring flaw in the game's concept, the music still gets me. This is some of the most dreary, depressing, guaranteed to be Eastern European music I've ever heard. play this song as they lower me into the volcano. I've never heard a soundtrack this depressing. A symphony of string cellos and violins cry out over the blistering sounds of a lonely blizzard. I mean, this is downright cinematic. Its fantastic use of the lower register paired with the somber stringed solos really evokes the destitute nature of the game's environment. It's real Alaska music, and as in I mean like real life Alaska, not the Between the Buried and Me album. Overall, I really enjoyed FrostPunk. It's not every day that I see a new spin on the colony sim genre. Even with its immersion-breaking logic, its graphical glitches, and its frame rate stuttering, the idea of building a city around a single central utility is fun. I can't wait to see how people take this and apply it to other fantasy genres. I can already see a clone taking place on an alien world where the center of your map is a terrarium structure that outputs all of your oxygen. Hell, maybe that game already exists or is in development. Regardless, where FrostPunk delivers, it delivers. I just wish that it didn't have the glaring problems that it does. FrostPunk gets a 7 out of 10. Good. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing or checking out the other videos on this channel. Don't forget to leave a comment letting me know what you'd like me to cover next, and I want to thank Rod for buying me FrostPunk while I was big sick with the big 19. It really helped me pass time while I was stuck inside. I'll see you guys next time. Special thanks to our executive producers Anthony Wumbo, John Foreman, and Zachary Coroner.